Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another absolutely terrific episode of Psyched to be with you. I'm your host, Christopher Leach. It is a pleasure and a privilege, as always, to share the stage with another incredible guest. This one is going to be fire, and I can predict this with a very good certainty. I was about to make a stats joke, but I refrained. So praise me for that. But yeah, this is going to be a great little chat. As ever, general sort of content warnings, you know, the themes of the channel, the themes of the show, mental health, gaming, all things like that. Any other specific ones you will hear in post-production. Otherwise, all that remains for me to do is pass over to you, my very special guest. Please, if you could, introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you do, maybe a little bit about why.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies, because as soon as we started going, the cat started scratching at the door and I had to really run to go and grab him because he's just got perfect timing. But hi, I'm Rosie. Thank you very much for inviting me on the show. I feel like there's a little bit of pressure now because you've said I'm going to be fire, and that's I don't live up to expectations very well.
Well, I think already, you're already being so humble already in what you're trying to do. So I wouldn't worry
just
about that.
Pure chaotic. But yeah, I always struggle with I always have a bit of an existential crisis when people ask me who I am, what I do, because I'm I don't know. I'm just kind of here, just doing it. But
so what's your official job title then? Let's go from that.
My official job title is a charity officer for Safe in Our World, which is a video games mental health charity.
Okay, excellent. So that's the official. And then what does that what does that mean?
Oh, it means a lot of things because the charity itself is pretty small at the moment. There are 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time, which basically means that everything that the charity does, one of the 3 of us are doing it. So it's it's a bit of a broad scope of things. And I always try to tell people that my colleague Sarah and I, when we first joined, we were the first 2 employees, and we kind of divided it up, the workload, as to how we wanted to do it. And I took all of the fun things and she took all of the officially boring things. And so what that means for me is that I get to manage the website. I get to run a podcast for the charity. I get to do the social media management. I get to talk to a lot of our ambassadors and our patrons and our champions, and just all around have a bit more of a fun time, I think.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I think it's important to sort of say, from a disclosure perspective, that Rosie and I know each other because I am a Safe in Our World champion. If you've been on the show with us before, you've been on the channel before, you'll know I'm very proud to wear their emblem on stream during stream hours. So yeah, that's sort of how we know each other. So you describe yourself as having the fun bit, but I have, believe it or not, met people in my life who love admin and just love admin. So
oh no, I mean, it's not the worst thing, but if I was to pick admin or podcast, I know which one I'm going to go for.
Well, I mean, I'm on a podcast right now, so
exactly. I feel like maybe it's too meta to talk about podcasts, but
well, I mean, you say that, but the Safe in Our World podcast. Let's hear a little bit more about that, if you please.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my baby.
It's lit. I know you shouldn't maybe I don't care about adding other people's podcasts on this podcast. You go listen to that after you've listened to this. Maybe stop here, listen to that, then come back so you can hear more about Rosie. Whatever works for you. That's fine.
I mean, yeah, you get full context. We've got a whole introductory episode where we talk about what we do, but
that's now also on YouTube, I believe.
It's now on YouTube. It's also now on Apple Podcasts, which nice. I sorted today. It was the bane of my existence for a long time, and then I finally got it sorted. So that was fun. But yeah, the podcast is very close to my heart. I initially pitched the idea a few months ago now, I guess, because the first episode was back in September, and it was after. We have meetings at work every 10 a.m. every day, and we would chat just so much shit. And we were this is entertaining. And we joked about starting a podcast where we just talk about us 3 and what we're doing in Safe in Our World. And then I thought, actually, seriously, maybe we should do a podcast, and maybe we should talk to lots of different guests about it. And so I was just yeah, I'm just going to do it. Let's go for it. And so we started it off. And it's been a blast so far. Like we've had 8 episodes go out so far. We've had some brilliant guests, and I feel very lucky to be able to be in charge of that.
I should stress that at the time of recording. It'll probably be more than that by the time you're probably hearing this, just to be uber meta, I guess.
Oh yeah, that is true.
On
There'll
the Apple
probably be more now.
podcast thing, like, oh my, like, say, like, why is podcast distribution, like, I know, like, in 2022, like, everyone has a podcast, but, like, why
Yeah.
is it such a faff to get your podcast distributed to places?
Oh, I really don't know. Like I had it on Anchor, and then it just like it wanted me to jump through so many hoops to put it on Apple Podcasts, and I just gave up after a while. And then someone sent me a sassy tweet, and I was like, oh, maybe I should just do it.
Well, it's
that's
funny you
what I
mention
did.
that, because, like, this show is hosted on Anchor also, and, like, all the other auto distribution worked fine, except, so I ended up having to contact support, which I legitimately think is the only reason I managed to get it to work, because I was just like, can you not just sort this out? It said it would be fine. It's taken like 3
Yeah.
weeks. Please make it happen.
I think it's got really difficult ever since Spotify bought out Anchor.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Well, it makes less sense because you think they'd have more money behind them. But
no, but they don't. That's a competitor. Apple Podcasts is their competitor, right? So why would they make it easy for people to go there instead of Spotify? Because they always push Spotify a lot more, don't you think?
Well, yeah, that's maybe true. Whereas I try and just be like, listen, wherever you find your podcasts, I don't really care. It doesn't really make any difference to me.
Exactly. It's just another way to listen. It's great.
I just want you, the listeners, to hear these incredible conversations with these incredible people. Sorry, yeah, we digress. Apologies.
We digress.
So, distribution of work in Safe in Our World, mental health gaming charity. Now, obviously, I'm very au fait with that. Can you give us the skinny a little bit more on what that is?
On Safe in Our World in general?
Yeah, so like just for say someone who like video games, mental health, like what?
Yeah, I used to be like that. So I guess I kind of found out about what Safe in Our World is in a unique way because at the time I was working for a first aid charity and I was working at the Nightingale Hospital in the Excel in London. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to someone about video games who's actually one of our trustees now. And they mentioned that they were a trustee for Safe in Our World. And I was like, what is that? And they were like, oh, it's a mental health games charity. And again, for a lot of people who don't know that, what it is, they'll be like, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand. And she talked to me a lot about it. And it kind of clicked in my head because the point of Safe in Our World is kind of twofold in the sense that we're here for people who play games, but also people who make them. And so for people who play games, a lot of people may not even like subconsciously feel better because they're playing games because it's an escape for them. They find solace in it. It's somewhere where they can go that's not real life for a little while. They can learn about themselves within video games. They can connect to characters within video games. Like there's so many different relationships that you can have between games and mental health that people may or may not be aware of. And when she started talking to me about it, it became very obvious in my head that that's something that I had that I just never considered before. And I think that's kind of the case with a lot of different people as well, especially streamers and content creators, because that's something that they can build their work on and with games as well. So that's kind of like one side of it. And the other side is the industry itself, because for those who might not know, the games industry can be a bit of a tough place to work in, specifically for a lot of marginalized groups. But within that, mental health is intrinsically connected between the two. And a lot of people disproportionately suffer from mental health issues compared to other industries, specifically within the UK, but globally as well. And so one of the things that we try to do within Safe in Our World is create initiatives to be able to support people who work in the industry. So that's kind of, I guess, the very basic structure to Safe in Our World.
Now you're saying I want to cut that to film, and I need to ship that to Safe in Our World, because that I think is one of the most brilliantly apt descriptions of why what you're doing is important. That was really good. That was like, oh, I felt it.
I say that a lot, but like I feel like I nailed that one.
that was good. So I think The industry, I think, is a part of it. It's half of it. It's half of the coin. Again, I've spoken on this show about sort of Take This, which is a parallel charity over in the US, a similar mandate and mission. I think. I sort of found Safe in Our World through another Take This streaming ambassador who was part of the 2021 class, as am I, who was also a Safe in Our World champion. I was like, Safe in Our World, what's this business? And then looked in, I was like, oh, a UK charity, and obviously being much more closer to home for myself, I was like, where do I sign? Like, get me in. I want to be involved in any way, shape, or form. And that sort of brought me to yourselves. Like, that mission is very important. Obviously, I look at it through like the other end of the telescope, maybe, and that I'm not maybe like directly involved in industry, but I am in research. And obviously,
Sure.
I was wild enough to go, you know what? Let's do a PhD in video games about mental health to try and reduce
That's brave,
stigmatization
though. I'm
in
kind of jealous.
students. Let's do some science.
Have you found, though, specifically that there isn't that much research in video games and mental health, at least not that much that isn't biased?
Well, in there sort of lies, I think, the problem, and I think I've spoken to a lot of great people who are involved in design, like people who like from like IGGI up in York and slash London. They're like an educational establishment in the UK that breeds sort of doctoral students who do game design. For those that don't know, and like I've spoken to people like them, and they're like, we need psychologists, we need people who study games and know them, and can help us build better games, because that's the point. For both the content, but also to help facilitate better workplace environments, and also help manage sensitive topics, because mental health is universal. It's something we all experience, right? And I think for me, and again, I'm being too centric to myself. This is your interview, but one of the things that really drew me to
no, it's a discussion.
One of the things that drew me to Safe and Well was like, yes, like more people that are on the same mission that I am, and I think that's a very collective sort of unity to get behind.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I've never seen such a ferociously passionate group of people come together over the same cause. Like, everyone who is interested in Safe in Our World is so passionate and so excited to change, to make change happen and to do good in games. And it's really refreshing because there's very little negativity within the actual charity itself, because everyone just wants to help each other. So yeah, it's a really nice atmosphere.
But it's not all work. You are a multifaceted, multi-talented individual. I know, because again, I know you about some of the other projects that you've got going, but do you want to sort of share a little bit more about those?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just a podcast maniac. That's not the right word. A podcast
aficionado,
fanatic. Well, that's fancy. I like that. Yeah, I just do podcasts. But no, I run a podcast with my friend Renji from Scotland, and it's called The Content Cafe. And it is basically about mental health within content creation. I would say it's half informative, half comedy, or like maybe 60% memes and jokes. But it's very telling and reflective of how we cope with mental health. And so I think it's very reflective of us as people. And I have a lot of fun with that podcast as well. So I do that once a week at the moment. I also have like a little community called Kind Creatives, which is for mental health creators to collaborate, to get to know each other, to get ideas off each other, to bounce ideas off each other, to ask each other questions, to get reassurance on things. Just because when I first started that podcast, I was really nervous about how I was coming across, what was okay, what wasn't. Was I being as inclusive as I possibly could be? Was I being responsible enough? And so there was a lot of questions kind of going around in my head. And I just thought, that's not just me. Like, there's a lot of people trying to create content that's, focused around mental health or more mental health friendly, that probably have the same questions and have had the same struggles. So I just kind of it was a throwaway tweet at the time. I put out a tweet just to say, like, hi, I'm interested in getting to know more mental health creators within this space. Like, if you're on Twitch, if you're a podcaster, if you're YouTube, if you're a writer, like whatever it is. And so many people replied, and it was really nice and really comforting. And so I was just like, I'll just kind of throw this into a Discord. And I wish I had more time to dedicate to it right now, because I love the idea, but also I don't want to be too, what's the word? I don't want to burn out for the sake of doing it, because that defeats the point.
Yeah. Oh, let's like focus on our mental health, guys, as I burn myself to ashes.
Exactly. So I kind of just use it as a nice little community to fall back on and to ask questions if I need to, but I don't feel any pressure with it, which is quite freeing in a way.
Again, for the benefit of disclosure, I'm also part of Kind Creatives, because I mean, if you hadn't guessed already, mental health content creation is my bag.
It was like a magnet. I put out the tweet and you just came running.
Pretty much. I'm like, things to do? Yes. Let's get involved. You cannot
more responsibilities? Sign me up.
You can't have enough subquests, yo. All that XP is going to help in the end.
I love it.
I say that, and like, I'm not to sort of plug myself, but I mean, like, even just through Kind Creatives directly, I've made connection with people that have led me to being on shows and meeting wonderful people. And I think the structure of it is really nice. You say about energy, but I think, like, let's real talk, content creator real talk, right? No one likes getting loads of everyone pings on Discord, right? No one.
No, oh my gosh, no I hate it.
So let's be honest, it's quite nice that it's a chill little Discord. It's quite quiet. That's nice, right?
Yeah.
So I
think
quite
I
like
prefer it.
Like, very chill. Not a lot of notification, because like that notification, you go on, there's like 8 all the dots, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. How many servers are you in right now?
That is a very good question. Like, I'm trying to keep it. It sounds like savage, but like as low as possible.
Because no, I don't think that's savage. I think it's smart.
Like, someone I interviewed with, Wabba Streams, great like person, and like they were like, oh, like, come on Discord, that's all chat. And I was like, just so you know, I will probably leave, because Discord servers, like, between you, me, and the Gatepost, I'm aware I'm on a podcast. That's a joke. Like, I'm in Discords that like I don't have the capacity to interact with, but I'm just not bold enough to leave.
No, I mean, especially if they've got leave notifications. Like, don't do that. That makes everyone feel so guilty. But no, I'm in so many, and I just categorize them now to the point where most of them are muted, and I kind of feel bad about it. But I know that if I really need to, I can get on there and talk to people. So I just think you've got to prioritize you. Like, no one's going to be active in like more than 5 or 6 servers, I don't think. And especially if you do them for work, it just becomes more of a task. So I have just cut the Safe in Our World servers. We originally had 4, now we've got 2, which is delightful. Because we had champions, ambassadors, public, and staff, and now we just have public and staff, and we've merged everything, Betsy. And it's great. Oof. I know. So that was a wonderful decision to start the new year, is to just axe some servers and make things more efficient.
Especially when, I think, in my experience, like, and it's not saying all people's are the same, but you end up following a bit of a layout roadmap, and then like there's only like, how many servers questions of the day do you reply to? How many different servers are you going to drop that picture of your dog or cat in? Like, yeah, it's a great photo, but like, even like the physical effort of like going through them all.
Especially if you know that there are people who are in the same servers as you, and they've definitely seen you post it more than once, because then it's like embarrassing, because you're like, I know that you've already, and if they react to it in both servers, like, what an MVP, but also how embarrassing.
Yeah, so it's definitely like, when you take on the added responsibility of community management, that's definitely like another layer of like, I'm going to use the word effort. That's maybe not the right word, but like just the amount of energy one has to put into it.
Yeah.
So like, I'm a big fan of like, I've done it in like my own little server. Links attached to wherever you found this. Of just like, I don't everyone unless it's like a big event or a big piece of news. I instead have a dedicated role people can sign up to optionally. Because there's another thing. I've seen another server, again, that will remain nameless, that like didn't everyone ping, but as soon as you signed up, you got a role that was for pings. So like that wasn't
so
like
you couldn't pick it.
Yeah, it wasn't like an opt-in; it was an opt-out. And I much more prefer opt-in personally. It's like, you know.
Oh, totally agree. Because then you actually get people who are genuinely interested. So the engagement to impression rate is going to be way better. People actually care about it. Like that's what we've got with the safe one, and that people can sign up if they want just charity news, if they want oh god, I can't remember other things, community nights, like game nights and stuff. Like there's little different things that you can do, and I like that. And I've seen it in a lot of different content creator servers as well, where they're like, if you want my going live pings, you can sign up here. If you want my new video on YouTube pings, sign up here. Like there's a lot of nice little things. It's good.
I think that's nice community management. I say that as someone who is not an expert, but you know, someone who's in Discord servers, I guess. But what do I know? I'm speaking to the professional. As far as I'm
You're really not. I've only been in this sort of role for like a year and a half. So I'm really not like an expert on anything. I'm definitely still learning as we go. And I think anyone who doesn't say that is either a liar or is like really a veteran in this sort of thing. So I think especially with something like community management, with social media just like booming in the past few years, it's becoming different like day by day at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a weird one. I really enjoy it though.
So we've kind of tapped into, I'd say, like the few of the main things that you get up to, right? And you gave us your job title, charity officer, right? Are you so bold as to call yourself a content creator?
Oh no, I don't know this question. I don't like this question.
I think you don't have to.
I don't know. It's so hard because it's like, technically, I create podcasts. Technically, on a technicality, I would say yes, but I don't feel like I've earned the title, which is such a dumb thing to say, because if it was me talking to someone else who'd done one thing, I'd be like, yeah, you can call yourself a content creator, like whatever, it's fine. It shouldn't be a big deal. But for some reason, assigning that label to myself is like a huge deal for me, and I just won't do it.
That's fair. I ask because you mentioned like a year and a half sort of experience in the role. I mean, look at the setup for listeners' benefit. There's a nice professional microphone and headset. You know, like that's the business. You know, like
I was very picky when it came to. Well, this was for work, and I was like, if we're going to do a podcast, we're going to do it right. And so
expensive.
They were like, okay, do you do what you need to do? And I was like, right, we're getting mic arms, we're getting mics, we're getting good quality things. And they were like, okay. And they just kind of let me do it, which was really nice. But I definitely think it gave me the confidence to be able to do it properly, because just before I got these, I had on the Content Cafe podcast, I'd already started, and it was like with a really terrible mic, and it just wasn't very good quality, and it made me really sad, and it didn't make me proud to release it. So it helps having stuff like this for sure.
Okay, awesome. So let's work in reverse order. And you mentioned that sort of like kind creatives, you like keeping it very low maintenance. It's meant to be an organic space, which is great. Could quickly just talk a little bit about the structure there, because I know, like, you know, I'm sort of designated the role as mentor, which is incredibly flattering. But what was sort of your thought process in creating those sort of tiers, if you will?
Yeah, I think I had really grand ideas when I first started that then became quite muted down, I suppose. And so the original idea that I had, which if I had more time to dedicate to it, would probably a lot more like detail. But I wanted it to be mentors of people who have talked about mental health a lot within their communities, within their content, and are able to give advice on behalf of the community to be able to offer more support to people. And that's kind of why I picked more people because I want, if someone came in and they were a really small time content creator, or they'd never talked about mental health before, they can look through a bunch of people and think, okay, who do I think maybe would represent my style of content, or might be more relevant, I suppose, to me. And then they could ask people questions directly, or they could throw it out there to everyone and just kind of see what sticks. But I liked the idea of having people who I know deliver good quality content and talk in a responsible way about mental health to kind of signpost people towards, I suppose.
Seal of approval. Let's go. You heard it here first.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that means because it's just me being like, yeah, they're great.
I mean, someone that works for a mental health gaming charity who is also a content creator, is that not qualification in of itself?
I don't know. I don't hold my opinion that highly, but it's nice that you do.
I mean, why wouldn't I? You know, no evidence to the contrary. You know what I mean? Like,
but that's the thing. Like, I think at first I was really nervous that I was going to make mistakes, and then I kind of realized like everyone is going to make mistakes at some point. Like, mistakes aren't the issue because it's how you react to them and how you better yourself in doing so. And with that, there are no rules when it comes to talking about mental health. I think that needs to be quite clear, is that everyone has a different experience. And as long as you're being responsible in the way that you're speaking about it, then I don't think there are any real rules on how you can explain your own experiences, I guess. Like, obviously, I have feelings about people trying to give others advice because I don't think that's smart or responsible. But
or let you know, pompon queijo queijo, as they say in Portuguese. Let's call it a spade. That is unethical. If you're a clinician, from a clinical, they have a code of ethics. In research, we have a code of ethics. That's why we have governing bodies. It's
yeah, exactly.
And
even if you are a professional, like, you still can't give people advice unless you're their professional.
Yeah, like,
and you're not, because if a content creator, it's different. So yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's that aside. I think everyone should be able to talk about mental health, but I think people are scared to do it because they don't want to do anything wrong, and they'll tiptoe around the subject instead of just being honest about it. And I think I want to encourage more people to be able to broach the topic without fear, I guess.
Well, that makes sense. I think so. That kind of ties into my next sort of question. But do you think, it's a back burner project? It's when you have time. Life is life. Do you see that maybe like being the future of kind creatives?
I would love it to be the future of it. I think it's really hard because I love my job. Like, right now, what I do, I love it so much. And I kind of wish there were more hours in the day to be able to do what I want to do, because there's so many projects that I see going on that I'm like, that looks so fun. I'd love to do it. And then I'm like, but for my own mental health and capacity, I'm going to say no, or I'm not going to reach out about it, because that's the thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in an ideal world, yeah, that would be amazing. Like, I've always still sort of considering branching out into streaming myself at some point to actually, like,
where do I sign up?
Have a go.
Let's make this happen.
I'm scared, but I want to try it.
If I can do it, anyone can do it.
I'm going to make my not resolution, but kind of resolution to try a stream before the end of the year. I will do it.
That will be like amazing. Like, look, like, I will send you a clip of like my earliest streams, and you'll be able to laugh so hard about how bad it is. Right? But I think
that's it though. Like, I'm too much of a perfectionist, and I know what I want in my head, but it's not going to be that way. So it's so daft, because I wouldn't give this advice to anyone else if they were to want to try it. But just because it's me, I'm like, no, you have to hold expectations way too high, and then you'll just never do it. So
I mean, I would say like the other way to do it is just like, if you just press the button and just go for it, then like whatever happens. That's how I kind of approach it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's how it should be. Like, that's what I did with the podcast, and I'm really happy with how it's going and how it's evolved since the beginning. And that's kind of the whole point of the journey, is to see it evolve and to grow with it, right? But it's very daunting to know that you're creating something mediocre to begin with. I think that's my issue.
Hold on. Let's not. So we're not categorizing via quality, because I think one of my friends, a previous guest on the show, Marco, he sort of said, even if you just press live though and you give it a go, like, that's already a greater leap than many people bother to make.
It's brave. Pride, like, I have a lot of respect to people doing that, 100%. But I think it's just the boundaries that I'm setting myself, or the barriers I'm setting myself, I should really say, that's preventing me from doing that. And I want to be able to break them down by the end of the year, to just go for it and see what happens. Because, like, going from being very socially anxious to the point where I would never do any public speaking unless I was literally forced into doing it, like for my degree. I then went to starting a podcast for fun. And I was like, the development is great. Like, I'm very happy that I've managed to do that because I wouldn't have thought I would ever be able to before. And so I'm kind of hoping to see the natural progression is to doing podcasts to then maybe doing streaming, because then it's like video and podcasts sort of, but not really.
No, I see that.
Live, which is kind of scary, but yeah.
I would say the two are two different heads of the Hydra, if that makes sense. Like, again, I'm talking from very limited experience, but I think from streamers that I know and sort of thing. Like, first thing, it should be fun. The first thing I did when I stream was like, hey, I kind of want to have a platform to talk about what I'm doing. Like, my career is very motivated behind that. I was like, but I started streaming at the start of 2021, so pandemic influences. Like, yeah, let's meet some people online. That'd be great. But I just picked up a game that I hadn't played and wanted to play, so I was like, let's do it live. Let's share the experience. And I deliberately chose like a narrative-driven game. I played Life is Strange because I was like, oh, we can have some discussion about the choices. The first one. Yeah, it was a time. It was a time and a
feelings,
place, an experience.
Emotions were high.
Yeah, wasn't a huge fan, if I was going to be really honest.
Oh, okay.
On the broad,
that's fair.
Yeah,
it's I love Life is Strange, but I can't play it very often because sometimes the cringe is too much.
Okay, we'll go down. We'll go down the tangent a little bit, but I just think just some things just didn't seem to had aged that well. I kind of felt, which is probably why they remastered it, touched it up, but also like the lack of content warnings at certain points was a bit yikes, and its representation of people with disabilities was just upsetting. There's no other way. And then then it goes like David Lynch at the end, and I was like, whoa, that's really quite strange.
It was a lot. Yeah, it's been a while since I've played it.
I also think a thing that impacted my experience was that I just played it all in one go. Not in one session, but you didn't have to wait for the episodes. That's a lot. It was originally episodic, right? And it was sort of released in parts. I think that definitely changed my perspective of it. But from a gaming standpoint, one of my key things was that I kept forgetting the whole point of the main quest. And if you're forgetting your main plot narrative because it's just sort of hitting you with other stuff to do, I was like, eh. And that's I'm not just dunking on the game. I haven't made a game. I'm not a game developer. They touched on a lot of important
but you don't have to have made a game to be able to have a view on it, right? I think you should play True Colors because that's a much more finished, polished experience in my opinion, and I have just finished it and I loved it a lot.
I haven't played it yet. When it first came out, there was a lot of talk in sort of the mental health community of they're kind of perpetuating the idea of empathy as a superpower. Ooh, let's see how they handle this. I haven't seen too many critical reviews of it. I generally have heard it's got good reception, but I haven't. I mean, who's got time to play games, right?
Me. I say that I had the code for 6 months and I just haven't played it. So it's just it's about timing. But no, I think I generally enjoyed the game and didn't think too much into it. But I could probably go into a deep dive at some point. I've actually scheduled to go and have a drink with a friend this week to do a deep dive about Life is Strange because I finally finished it and they were like, I need someone to talk to you about it. So that should be fun. But yeah, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, so sorry, we digress. So yeah, just pick a game you want to play, share that with people. That's, I think, part of the thing. And just there are no rules, right? There are no rules. If you don't want to have your webcam on, don't have your webcam on. Just go full screen game, go chill vibes, it's all good. If I just kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, it was okay, let's get as best fit to this to start with. And I think the best piece of advice I've heard is from a streamer friend of mine, Death Unites Us, and he's been in content creation for nearly 15 years at this point, I think. And he's just just have fun. That if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. because like you should be there to have fun. That's the principal aim, I think, of it. Yes, it's difficult and it's time consuming, but I think, and you touched on burnout before, you see a lot of people trying to get everywhere because the market, if I don't like to use capitalist terms too much, but like the market is so competitive, it can be difficult to even just like meet people. Like I'm a absolutely crap Twitch streamer because I don't spend that much time on Twitch. I don't network. I'm not in other people's chats. They're not like, I'm not meeting people that way, which is one of the biggest ways you grow your own audience, right? I stream once a week for a few hours, and there are people streams that I like wish I could watch. I just don't because I get way too involved, that kind of thing. So just sort of like approach it with like, yeah, I'm just gonna have fun. I will say, in the first season of the podcast, I tried doing it live and sort of like recording it and stuff. It actually becomes really difficult because you're trying to like manage chat and your guest, and I just found that I wasn't getting the depth of conversation that I wanted. Other people do it masterfully. Maybe that's just a skill thing with me. But I
think it depends. Like, we do it once a month generally with Content Cafe, and luckily I don't do the streaming side of it, so I have quite a nice time because I'm just doing the podcast for me. But I will have it open to read questions, and we just kind of have like a periodic timed message and chat that goes out to say like, we're probably not going to see your message, so just save it until the end, and then people will ask it at the end, which always helps a little bit. But yeah, it's always good if you've got moderators on there to help you out a little bit.
Also true. I'll just come in and say hi to everyone. Hello, bud. Excuse him.
Hi.
So just to dial back then, we went on a nice, wonderful walk around the tangent. So what's the Content Cafe? Is that the right words? I'm bumbling. Is that what's sort of next for that?
Ooh. I mean, we've got grand plans for the Content Cafe, and
nice.
I don't know how much I'm allowed to share yet, because also I don't want to be like, we're going to do this and then we don't do it.
That's fair.
I think we want to be more decisive with the editing. Mm-hmm. So we've changed up our editing style for the next episode, which is going out tonight. No, it's not, because this is in the past, sometime in January. And it's like a lot more snappy to the point, and I feel like it gets across our humor very well, but also doesn't drag, so people actually are really engaged at the whole thing, which is something I'm really excited about. We want to branch out into more video based things, not necessarily with us, but like nice little screens that we could put up on YouTube and things like that.
There are people listening to this going, editing exists? He could edit this? He chooses not to. There are people watching this going, you can have moving video that isn't just their faces and a static foreground? What?
No, it's a stylistic choice. It's effort as well. Like, this is why we haven't done any of it, because it is time consuming to get this stuff sorted. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't done it so far, because we're both very busy. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to do that. I think we want to explore like lots of different formats of the podcast anyway. Like, we want to see more about live podcasts and how that would work with guests, because at the moment we're kind of doing all of the guest podcasts are live rather than recording them separately, which is always interesting, but I think probably for the best, because we have such a chaotic relationship trying to to manage the podcast, because it's got to the point now where we've done it too much, and we're good friends enough that it's like I forget that we're doing a podcast sometimes. And to have that, and then with added pressure of having a guest and not being like too chaotic, I find difficult. So if it's live on stream, we're a bit more toned down, ironically. And we've got it sorted.
So what I'm hearing there is that actually there's two podcasts in there. There's one that is just two hosts and a guest, and they've come round to, shall we say, like your tea house, and you're all just chatting away, and it's a very sort of natural experience. And then there's also like, we do also do a formal set of questions on the side that's maybe less chaotic.
No, I feel like it's formal, well, not formal, like relaxed questions on live with a guest, and pure gremlin chaos on the normal podcast. It's just us bouncing off each other, and it's very loosely scripted. Nice. And I think it's enjoyable. I think we're looking to see if we can fine tune it a little bit so we don't go off on so many tangents, because we do. It's terrible. Like, as soon as we mentioned one thing, I think we had like a 40-minute tangent at the start before we did an intro, and it's terrible. And I had to edit that. It took me so long. And it wasn't something you couldn't not edit. Like it was, you know,
it was a thing.
Wouldn't have been good to publish. So yeah. So it was that. But no, I'm having a lot of fun with it. And it's quite nice to have a much more relaxed conversation than my Safe in Our World one, which is probably a lot more formal, I would say, obviously, because I'm representing the charity, but because we've got some really great guests on there as well, it's covering some very important topics. Whereas the Content Cafe is more just like two friends catching up about mental health, is how I would put it.
Okay. I mean, I've listened to both. Fan of both, because again, like, of course I am. But yeah, I think that you can you can indicate the stylistic differences between the two, certainly. But I think that one of the big things I'd say for me is that both are treading some of the same ground in a good way, and that's not like a dunk. I don't know why that brain took a long time to string those words together, but like mental health, like that's the point you made before, right? And that it doesn't matter how you have the conversation, just that you have the conversation.
Yeah, it's a different way and stylistic choice of having that conversation, and I think that's what's important, is that no one talks about it in the same way, or not many people talk about it in the same way. Everyone's got their own take on it, and so you could be saying the same things in 18 different ways, but as long as the message hits home and you're entertaining in the way that you do it, I think that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I just like the difference in that stylistic like idea. Like, you have like two people chatting, and that's like very, I don't want to, it's cliche, like down to earth, and then you've also got like, these professionals, because again, like, you need both. It exists on a spectrum, right? And that, like, yes, these people who are working in the biz and have these experience, and like, yes, we sit them down and it's a formal interview, but like, as I say, like, it exists in both frames, and like, you can have the conversation in those ways and get the different perspectives. I think that's like the beauty of like listening to both. And you've had some guests from like wide ranging areas as well. It's not like you're just interviewing, say, like one area, which is really cool.
Yeah, that would be no fun, because then it would be like the same episode over and over again. It's nice to talk to so many people from different perspectives on the industry and mental health as well. Like, we've got mental health professionals lined up, we've got purely game devs lined up. Like, it's just going to be a really interesting mix to see how people respond to the same sorts of questions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And then sort of like anything else sort of safe in our world wise, that's sort of up and coming, or like maybe even just like feelings of sort of what's going on
for the podcast, or just in general?
Either.
So podcast wise, pretty steady with the same sorts of stuff that we've been putting out at the moment. We've had a great response from people wanting to get involved. So content wise, we're pretty sorted for a few weeks, which is really nice, and a nice position to be in. For Safe in Our World wise, it's difficult to try and plug anything without knowing when this is going to go live, but we will have a games bundle going out in February of 22, and that will be a huge fundraiser for the charity. We also have the May fundraiser, which is Mental Health Month. It's going to be great. It's going to be a bunch of activities, podcasts included, panels, streaming, the whole shebang. Like, everything we want to do is going to be Mental Health Month, and it's going to be great. And I'm really excited to do that, because it was a lot of fun last year, and that was the first time I like featured in streams properly. So nice. Yeah, carnage, but really good. So we've got that coming up. We have plans to continue with the Level Up program with my colleague Sarah, and she will be really pushing that forward, which I'm excited about. I don't know how much I can share right now on that, but that is also a plan. We want to do more training. Obviously, we've just finished the free community manager training course, which you went on, I believe.
Yep.
The very first round that we've done, and I'm hoping that we're going to review and not publish. I don't know what the right word is.
Let's go with re-augment.
Yeah, that works. Because I think it had a lot of valuable lessons for a lot of different people, and we're hoping to be able to continue to provide that as a free resource for people because I think it's important. So that's something that we're going to be looking to do. But yeah, a lot of it's funding dependent. So we will see, and there'll be a lot of things announced. So I guess that the place that I would point you towards if you're interested in seeing what we're up to is probably the website, which is safeinourworld.org, or just any of the social media accounts.
Links attached to wherever you're engaging with this
Thank
right
you.
now. No, okay, that's fine. I mean, so it's. I also kind of want to tease this out for listeners' benefit, but Safe in a Whale is a very new charity in terms of like the sector. Is there anything? Maybe you don't know, but like, what sort of maybe the 5-year plan for the charity? What sort of maybe the areas of growth? This is just me being nosy now.
We do have we have a loose 5-year plan. We've got aspirations that we want to achieve, but it's very much dependent on how we grow in the next few years. And so we have so many projects that we want to do, but obviously there's just 2 full-time people and 1 part-time. So it's, again, resource dependent. So there's huge plans to expand the podcast and video content within the charity, which is great. We want to be able to videofy people's hero stories and talking about mental health, and almost have like a TED Talks version of people within the games industry talking about mental health, which could be really fun. We want to do more events, want to hopefully work more closely with developers to be able to assess video game mental health representation, which would be ace.
If you need some psychologists for that.
Well, yeah, we want to be able to expand our clinical board a little bit more and be able to use them as efficiently as possible, because we do have a clinical board. But right now everyone is so busy, including the staff, that we're not using them to the full advantage I think we could. So that's a huge part as well. We want to massively upgrade the website. That's probably not 5-year plan, that's probably 2022 plan. Nice. But I really want to redo the games side of things on the website, because I think there are some brilliant games on there, but they need to be categorized in a way that is helpful for people to know what sort of genre of game, I suppose, but also what sort of experience they're looking for in a game. And so I want people to go on the website and see like, oh, I'm looking for a game that's more mindfulness based or personal well-being based, and they can go to that section, or they can click on like, I want to see good representation of mental health within characters in games, and they can go and see examples of that. So that's kind of my plans for that.
Yeah, that I think is another great point, in that like you can have games that are about like mental health themes, or like, so I'm going to pull out an example of like Little Misfortune is a great game about death, but like, oh boy, that's a game and a half that has some content that could do with some warnings.
Yes,
but it's ruddy good. But there's a difference between that and maybe something like Gris, which is an entirely different type of game in terms of its design, exactly. But also like, but both games about death, you know?
Yeah, they're just very different, and that's what I kind of like about the fact that we've got a variety of games to choose from, because a lot of people will they'll know what they want, but they don't know the way they want to go about it. And like, from someone who has played games when they struggled from losing someone, it's very difficult to know what you want until you've tried it, and then you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to play this game. It's putting me in a worse state than I was before, versus a game that is allowing you to explore those feelings in a much more safe, pardon the pun, setting, and a much more like friendly, easy, like positive light, I suppose.
It's about what you need, right?
It's difficult.
Like it's tough, and everyone needs different things and wants different things, right? I mean, again, like I've played both of those games. I enjoy both immensely, but like one of the ways I deal with things is through humor. So the absolute morose nature of Little Misfortune had me falling off my chair because I found it hilarious and thought this is such an innovative and wild way to get across the message, but in also a game that is functionally like well designed. And you know, it's about like what you enjoy, and I think that's a really sort of good. I apologize, I did interject there as you were mid flow.
Not at all. Oh no, I think it's fine though, because like you said, it's all about the journey that you want to take. Theme, regardless of theme, like you can have 8 different games that are all based on the same thing, but you can have a million different ways to play them. So I think it's about offering people choices to be able to play the games, to potentially educate them on mental health, but also just to give them some time to self-reflect sometimes is all they need,
Mm-hmm.
which is super nice.
So I apologize. That question about Safe and Will was completely just me being nosy. I was just genuinely curious. So blindsided you there. Pun completely intended.
Nice.
To step away from work then, what do you sort of typically get up to when you're not in work? Tell us about your. I don't like to call it free time. I say not work time now because there's not much of it.
Oh yeah, I relate to that. Obviously, it'd probably be no shock that I like playing games in my free time or my
What?
not work time.
Hold the presses.
I know. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to say it, but
Someone
I
call
do
my
spend.
parental guardian and inform them of this shocking news.
I know, it's such a surprise to everyone, I imagine, but I do play games in my free time. I'm also a big fan of plants.
Nice.
Which is probably, again, should come to no surprise because they're all behind me right now.
You can see some lovely decorative, some flora or fauna. I don't know which is which.
Flora.
Flora, just sort of hanging in the background of Rosie's video there.
Yeah, they're all. Yeah, they're all not fake. None of them are fake. They're all real.
Oh, nice.
Which is nice. So that's good. No, I like plants. I am a big fan. I've really got into cross stitch lately. But the irony is that I've started something that says, oh my God, what does it say? Oh no. Oh, I can't remember right now, but it's something along the lines of just like, it's get shit done, right?
Nice.
But it's like my 6th month into doing it and I still haven't got shit done and I feel bad about it. But it'll get there eventually. Like I quite like the hypocrisy in what I'm doing. So that's nice. But no, I find that sort of thing really therapeutic. I've already talked about podcasts, so I'm not going to talk more about podcasts. I've been hugely into music a lot. I love music. I have I'm going to call it minor because it is minor, but a minor obsession with collecting records now. Even though I don't actually play them very often, I just like having the physical art with me. It's just nice. So I'm a big fan of records, and I love the cinema so much. I forgot how much I loved it until I went the other day and I saw Spider-Man and was like, I miss cinema so much. Like, it's just such an experience. So that's another thing. And then I guess journaling. I like writing stuff down. It's fun.
Nice. Okay. So a lot to sort of unpick there. Let's on the podcast question actually, and feel free to decline to answer. But do you listen to many podcasts? You don't have to like reel off a list, but like in that same way, people always joke like, well, if you work with games, you tend not to play as many. I know since researching them, I've played a lot less games than I did prior. Is that the kind of same thing as someone who does a lot of podcasting? Do you find you have less time to enjoy podcasts?
Honestly, yeah, a little bit. I kind of feel bad saying it, but it's I like podcasts a lot and I will listen to them. I don't like listening to my own back because I have to edit them, and so it's exhausting doing that. So I have like a comfort podcast that I go to, which is the Jenna and Julian podcast. Because when I listen to it, I remember being back in a time where I would like play games and listen to it, and it's like, I don't know, it's always like a nostalgic thing for me, but it's just very comforting. I like listening to voices, and so I guess what I've kind of done now is switch over to Twitch a little bit, and we'll just kind of do my own thing whilst someone's talking in the background, which is what I quite like about it. So yes and no, I guess, is the answer to that question. Perfectly
legitimate answer. Like it. Records, I'm a big fan of vinyl as well, like an audiophile, as you might say. Big fan of music. Have you got like a favorite record for any particular reason?
I do. And I actually brought it as prop because I knew that this was going to be one of the questions. I'm so organized.
I mean, top quality guesting, let me just say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is one of my favorite records of all time.
Oh.
It is Vices and Virtues by Panic at the Disco. It is delightful. It's such a weird album, which is kind of why I love it so much, because it's like they said, genre? Who's she? No idea. They just kind of picked all of them. And that's why I like it, because it's so bold. But no, I'm a big Panic at the Disco fan. Even though it's just Brendan Urie at this point. Like there's no band anymore, bless him.
Yeah, like I mean that album was like a very sort of transformative time for the band, and I think when you think back at I'm actually a bit of a Panic at the Disco fan myself.
Yes, love to see it.
At like the time, it was like a really exploratory album. There wasn't that much music that was attempting to do what was being done there on that record.
Exactly.
I will quickly interject. You may, and this is just a little bit of self-promotion, but on my Twitch channel, I actually have a vinyl of the week, channel point redemption. Like people do it. You pick a number between. I think I'm at like 45 vinyls now, and I will pull one out of the chest, and I will show you the art, the front, back, the disc, the sleeves, all that kind of business. Just do like a mini review almost of the individual record.
Oh, I love that, because that's like one of the best things about vinyls is that it's a physical copy of the artwork, and especially if you're like in love with the album, it's so nice. Like I recently just bought The Last of Us soundtrack, but like original songs vinyl, I guess, on it. And I love it so much. Like it's so pretty, and the actual vinyl itself is like all blue, and oh, it's so gorgeous. And I'm like, I'm scared to play it.
I am about to ruin my own shot, which is going to bite me on the backside. But I will attempt to show you here, just up there in the top right corner. You can see, as I like to refer to him, our Lord and Savior, Father John Misty, and that is the God's favorite customer, losers edition vinyl that oversees me and all my activity.
I love it.
And there is just something really special about like having that physical artwork and like the physical presence of like the disc and stuff. That, you know, I was a big fan of CD back in the day. You know, back in my day, absolutely. CDs. Oh, and yeah, like this. And okay, you're obviously going to agree with me, but just sounds better on vinyl.
It really does. I like a good crackle. It's great.
I don't know how, but it just enhances the music.
It's just got atmosphere.
And it doesn't matter
what the sprinkle of atmosphere,
what the genre of music is. I've got Celeste B-side remixes on vinyl.
Yeah.
And it's just better. It's just good. Yeah. I don't know how.
That's the thing. Like I've got such a weird collection of vinyls. I've got from Panic at the Disco, and then it goes to like Billie Eilish, and then the Last of Us soundtrack, and then Arctic Monkeys, and oh no, one of the that I really shouldn't have forgotten right now. Fleetwood Mac, Christ.
Nice.
Just a bunch of random different things, but they all sound so good. I've got no regrets. Great.
Nice. That's what I like to hear, if you'll pardon the pun. That one was an accident, but we'll roll with the joke.
You gotta own it.
When you've got it, you've got it, as one of my good friends always says.
Exactly.
One of the sort of the default questions that I ask on this show, but I try and change it up because not everyone is a gamer or game player, as you might prefer to be known. Gamer is a sociologically loaded term. See Dr. Richard Coates' work for more on that. But like, you know, you mentioned you played Life is Strange. Have you played anything else recently?
Yes, I've been replaying the BioShock series.
Okay, nice. What do you play on?
A PlayStation 4.
Nice.
I love PlayStation.
Steady.
If I could have got a PlayStation 5, believe me, I would have. I also really kind of desperately want the Series S, this little dinky. It's cute. And I one day will own a gaming PC, but for now, I am stuck with a trusty PlayStation 4, which I've had for several years, and it's not let me down yet. So we're doing well. I also have a Switch Lite, which I adore so much. Like I've just started playing House Flipper.
Nice.
Which is so relaxing to me. I love it. It's just ideal. I feel like cleaner afterwards.
Nice.
Like I'll be sat around in like a dirty room and I'm like, oh, I'm so productive house cleaning on House Flipper. But It's really nice. I love it.
That's good. How are you finding replaying the Bioshock series? An absolutely incredible series in my view.
I love it so much. I think Bioshock may be one of my favorite games of all time. I adore it. I've actually got a metal poster of Rapture in my bathroom.
Ooh.
I've posted on my Twitter before because I love it so much and it's so cool. But yeah, I love the Bioshock
I love
series.
that it's in the bathroom. That's like,
Of course, it has to be in the bathroom.
Such a great joke. If you don't get that, like, please, like, wiki it. Like, just you're playing yourself.
Oh my god, yeah, it has to go in the bathroom. Where else would it be? But yeah, I love Bioshock so much. And I think the more you play it, the more details you pick up on. And I guess when you first play through it, there's a lot of lore and a lot of story behind it that you might just not, might be too overwhelming to like remember all the details. Then the more you go back, the more you're like, oh, I understand this universe a lot more. And I like the moral side of it, of course. I love being able to make decisions in games, even if they don't really have that much of consequence. I think it's kind of fun to feel like you're in an agency of this game. So yes, I do love Bioshock to a different level.
Do you have like? I mean, it's kind of unfair, I think, to compare Infinite to the other two because it's so far removed. Not in terms of its lore, but like just in the way that it's set up. Right.
It's just very different.
Are closer. I agree. I enjoyed all three. I felt like the leap between 1 and 2, like I enjoyed 2 so much more, and then like again with Infinite. I'm tempted to say I think 2 it might be my favorite.
Oh,
I don't know. I'm sitting here going, I haven't played them for a while. I might need to replay them.
I like all of them. I still think the first one is my favorite. Don't know why. I think it's just the introduction to that universe and the storyline that went with it was just beautiful.
Would you kindly
so good.
Explain why?
Oh my gosh. Someone used that in an article that I did and I got far too excited. It was an article for Safe in Our World and they highlighted, would you kindly have a good Christmas or something. It was a Christmas article, but it was really cute. And I got so excited when I read it and was like, oh my God, there's the reference to Bioshock. And they were like, yeah.
This is an equally as good geeky reference, but in the academic world. One of my academic colleagues, Dr. Jennifer Germain, she managed to include the phrase in her in an academic paper, I believe, that was whose digital footprints are these? But referencing Metal Gear Solid, like whose footprints are these? And I was like, nice. That is some of the best things I've ever seen.
Oh, it's a reference within a reference. I love it.
A feint within a feint.
Yes.
But like yeah, Bioshock is so good. The atmosphere, the lore, I think the psychological perspective of it is great, you know, and I just remember really, really enjoying 2, like a lot. I felt like they elevated the battle mechanics, I think, a lot, and like I like the choices in 2 a lot more as well.
Yeah, I realized as soon as I said like, oh, I like having the illusion of agency is very fitting for the Bioshock series, but I'm not going to spoil anything because I don't like spoilers. So annoying. But if you haven't played Bioshock, I would highly recommend it. It's actually one of my favorite franchises ever. So yeah.
So where are you up to in the replay?
Well, I rage quit because my PlayStation decided to the disc had a fault like mid boss battle, and I was so frustrated, and then it didn't save until right to the way back at the start of the chapter, and I was just like, I need a break. And that's why I played Life is Strange, because I was like, I need to play something else instead of Bioshock right now, because I'm going to get mad about playing the past 2 hours again. So that's where I'm at. I'm at the end of the line on the station, at the end of the train line, if that makes sense. Final stop. So yes, but it's been a while since I've played number 2 as well, actually. So I always find it interesting, but I'm looking forward to moving on to Infinite as well.
It's all good. It's all gravy, as we might say. That's excellent. So you've been playing some good stuff. That's good. I'm just gonna cross-reference my questions. So with all that in hand, I feel like we've got like a nice picture of sort of what you do, why you do it, and that's great. My next two questions, I like to think of like let's take a step out of ourselves. Let's reach aspirationally. Let's have some fun. Okay, so
Okay.
first thing I want to ask is if you had no limitations whatsoever, like be that financial resources, people power, anything like that, right? Time doesn't exist in this universe, right? What project would you like to do? Now, usually, again, this is in the context of like, say, what would your research idea be? Like the one thing you'd like to research if resources were in a question, or what game would you want to make if resources were in a question? So the answer, you can take it in any direction you want.
Okay. I honestly think I would love to explore the Kind Creatives community and make it into something more than it is if I had the time, resources, skill, etc., etc.
So you like
I
slap
would love.
the kind creative sign on a tower block, set of offices. Everyone's got jobs.
That
Let's
would
do
be
the
cool.
business.
That would be really fun. Like imagine having like a full-on stream team that's just dedicated to mental health, resources and charity, and that would be ideal. I love that. That would be a really fun project for me, I think. So it pulls together things that I'm very passionate about into one big project, like mental health, video games, content creation, to one big thing. Like, I think that would be amazing. It'd be so much fun. I'd love also to learn a little bit more about how to make games, and actually get involved with the production of games. I think it would be fascinating for me. I don't know. I feel like I've already said it, but I'm too much of a perfectionist. So it'll be like I'm detrimental to myself and opportunities because I will just stick a bunch of like limitations that don't exist in my head. And they'll be like, well, I can't do that. So it's a tricky one. But yeah, I think I would just like to expand on some of the projects that I'm already doing, because the reason why I'm doing them now is because I'm passionate about them. And if I had more time to be able to dedicate that and more resources and actual like being able to support and pay people and for for the content cafe, for example, I would love to be able to do that half time, I guess, part time for a living. Like that would be so much fun for me. And being able to pay someone to be able to do proper animations and like a nice sort of visual aid to it, be able to properly subtitle it effectively and stuff like that. I'd love to be able to branch out and spend loads of time doing it and creating something that I'm really, really proud of. But yeah, it is limited by money and time and resources and people and everything else and brain space.
Yeah, I think
so it's difficult.
If I was going to be like, I'm going to say cliche, but I mean like, you've mentioned a few times that like, oh, you want to achieve something that you're proud of, and kind of reference that as like an end product. But I think like is growth not something to be eminently proud of?
Oh, massively. Like I kind of regularly reflect on what I'm doing compared to what I thought I'd be doing 6 months ago, 6 years ago, how far I've come personally in terms of my own confidence and belief in myself, because that's been a running joke in my family for like the past 10 years. My basketball coach used to shout believe at me in the court, which was always a good time.
You've just got to believe.
Yeah, it was so funny, but like everyone would just say it. And so now it's ingrained in my brain that I'm like, I need to believe in myself. This is something I need to do. And it's like very much fake it till you make it sometimes. And that's okay. Like, I think it's fine. You don't have to, there's no like good path going up to self-growth, whatever it is. It's going to be like a wild roller coaster, and that's fine. I think you just have to have some retrospect, I guess, in being able to look back at it and seeing the journey that you've made.
I loved the finger quotes round self growth there, and I think I know why that is, but I don't want to assume.
No, go for it. What's your assumption?
Well, it's just like, because I mean, self growth is one of those buzzwords. It's very sort of marketable, and like for me, from a skill based sort of perspective, I guess like it's just self reflection. Self reflection
Yeah.
is a very necessary skill. I think if you are able to, Mr. Blobby your way kind of through life without reflection or cause for any of your actions, you're kind of living without consequence, which is, oof,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
that's
worrying if you never self-reflect. Like, also, how could you not? Like, what does your brain think of during the times where you're not doing something? Like, does it just go blank? What's your brain doing? You got to be thinking about stuff, you know?
I mean, I do. I mean, again, like like yourself. I think when you're doing content, but also like I like to write things. It's one of the ways I enjoy sort of producing content, I guess. And I like to do like an audio version for everything I write because accessibility is important. And some people prefer to read things, some like to listen to them anyway, as a preference. But I think like I'm a very reflexive person, so the fact that some people like are not is something that I struggle to process. If that makes sense, like it's fine. Like you do you, that's all good. But I feel like part of again cliches, I love them. But to understand where you want to go, you kind of need to understand where you've come from.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
I think it's especially with people who are in this sort of spaces that we're in and surrounded by people who are very positive and open about mental health and, very happy to talk about it, but also content creation is nothing new in a lot of the spaces that we're in. And when you step outside of that, it can be really like hard hitting sometimes. Like I've definitely spoken to people who I know very well, but I've never really discussed mental health with them for whatever reason before, and it'll come up. And some of their views are like so backwards to me. But because I'm surrounded myself with people who think in a very similar way than I do, and who reflect in the same ways I do, or even just like have the same ideology, I suppose, around mental health, and it's not so, like Tory focused or whatever. but, you know,
but
so
for international listeners, that refers to a political ideology over here in the UK. Like I can't think of a good parallel, but yeah, the people currently running the country. Yeah. I couldn't remember the words, but like conservative aligned with like Republican.
Republican.
Yeah, that's it, right? Like, yeah.
Well, they're not Democrats, so.
Well, yeah. But no, I think like usually to be that's the kind of statement that I would retort with. Well, it's important we don't live within an echo chamber, but I
Sure.
like hard agree with like mental health. Mental health is a thing that we should not, I think, renege on like ever. It's a thing I think like
No.
the views that are emerging and through people like yourself and through things like Safe in Our World and Take This and Can Creators is beginning to become more household. I'm tempted to say, perhaps that's an overstatement. But like when you have something that is literally, and I mean literally universal, it's and you see the effects of it. It's scary. I think to think there are people that are like, mental health isn't a thing. Quote unquote, man up, quote unquote, cheer up, like kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I
really...
think those are the things that I really try and distance myself from, especially on online communities, because social media can be a pretty terrible place for a lot of people. And if I can do anything that I can to almost protect myself from people who I know are never going to believe in what I believe and have views that I will never understand or agree with or even sympathize with, because sometimes they're really damaging and very discriminative, and I don't want them in my space ever. So I'm more than happy to just like snip, bye. I want positivity. I'm happy to debate things with people, but not when it comes to people's human rights. Like, I just don't have time for that. But like if I'm I just can't deal with bigotry and discrimination on social media ever, and I just refuse to get into conversation with people like that, because I find it very challenging, and I don't know what good it changes. Like, I feel like it's best to not engage most of the time.
I think, like,
having said that,
there is like a nexus, and I think firstly within your own social media, you have a complete right to curate your own experience. I had someone one time, like I unfollowed them. I was like, you know what? They said some things I disagreed with, and I was like, okay, this is a fundamental difference. That's fine. I'm gonna cease this sort of social connection. And I was like, that's it. And then they confronted me and was like, whoa, what's going like essentially, why have you unfollowed me? And I was like, well, just because there are differences in views in your ideology that I don't agree with. And I said, yeah, it's fine. You're entitled to your views. That's okay. But I don't agree, and I don't wish to associate myself with it. Now,
Yeah, exactly.
they seem to not understand. They're like, well, why would you not have the debate? Like, that kind of like cliche, argue me on my podcast, bro, kind of like
Oh,
ideology.
yeah.
And I'm like, no, I just, because that content was not, it was not beneficial to me. That's not the right term to use because that makes it transactionalized, but it was
Yeah.
not bringing me joy. Therefore,
Yeah.
I would cease to engage with it because it was potentially actively upsetting.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, I think there's like kind of two things, one by association and one by the outcome of it. And a lot of the people who have these very, I'm going to call them unpopular. It's not the right word, but bad views, in my opinion, terrible views, who are only wanting to start a conversation to anger you, because there are people like that on the internet that just do things to piss people off. And I used to be someone who fell for that. And now I'm just like, look, I don't have the energy. I'm just going to talk about what I talk about. And that's it. And then on the other half of it, like if, for example, you follow someone who fundamentally has different views to you in the terms that it could be damaging to somebody else, it's not necessarily just you. Like I've sometimes seen people who've been very damaging to certain communities and certain marginalized communities and gone on their profile and seen that they're being followed by people that I follow. And then that makes me think, well, do they condone their behavior? Do they even know what's going on? And so it's really difficult to then, I would never associate people with that behavior just based on who they're following, because you have no idea, right? But it's always something that I consider, and I'm aware about myself when I'm on Twitter specifically, I guess, but I don't want to be following problematic people because I don't want to grow their platform, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hard agree. I think there's like a solid sort of movement, isn't there? Of like if I'm following someone that has affected you or your community, like tell me, because I want to know about that so I can cease to support or by association advocate for that individual and or group. And I think that's important because I mean, there is just so much. It can be so difficult to keep up with things, and at the end of the day, when you like yourself, I'd be tempted to at least try and put myself in the same bracket, like who is trying to do things in a certain way and wants to promote a certain outlook of growth and like I was going to say positivity. That's again a bit of a buzzword that maybe gets misrepresented, but like a certain reflexive kind of open-mindedness, perhaps, is the best way to kind of look at it.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is important, in my view.
Yeah, especially if people like see you as a respected person in whichever field that you're in. It's like I know that I do that, and like just for an example, like on LinkedIn, if someone like sends me a request to I don't really know what become friends on LinkedIn
Connect,
is. Just connect on LinkedIn. Yeah. If I see that someone else who I respect is connected with them, I would probably just trust them. And I guess it's the kind of same thing on Twitter. Is if I see a lot of people who I trust following someone, I'll be like, oh, well, I'll probably follow them back because they're in this certain group of people and I trust all of these people. So why wouldn't I trust them? Yeah, it's strange. Social media is weird, huh?
I mean, it's there's a whole field of psychology dedicated to it. It's a real beast.
Oh.
But I think that to circle back to, I think the positive is that a lot of people say, for example, Twitter is my preferred social media platform. I guess, like Discord is a social media platform, as is Twitch, in my opinion, to a degree.
Yeah.
But I just perhaps don't use those as much. Again, because like Discord is very sort of like curricular activity kind of related or extracurricular activity related, and it kind of exists in its own sort of little mini dimension, I guess, in my brain. But Twitter is my preferred platform, and like honestly, like because I have curated it, like nearly all of the content that I get like on my feed is stuff that I enjoy or people I want to learn from or things I want to sort of like see those people share. we've all done it. We fall for what's trending and we look at stuff and then fall into a little bit of a vortex of like reading the comments and the quotes, tweets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've all
And
done
then
it.
you're like, why is this so negative? And you're like, oh, I'm on the comment section. I need to go back.
Yeah. We've all been there. It's fine. It's okay. But like on the whole, I'd say like my feed is generally a pretty positive place, and that's good. That's what you should want from social media.
Yes, I don't want social media to be exhausting, especially because I have to professionally spend time on it for my job. So I will make sure that I've curated a nice space for me to live in while I'm on there, because I do a lot of work through social media. Like I get a lot of opportunities and connections through social media, which I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't been on there. So it's like that balance between being professional, just being like I just tweet so much shit.
Well, I mean,
and I forget.
You're saying that, but then you're like, oh, think goals for, the new year. I want to be on more podcasts. And here we are. Because I was like, hey, I want you to be on more podcasts.
Exactly. This is what I mean. It's a great place to connect with people and network. But it's also a great place just to laugh.
And look at great memes.
Exactly. Oh, I love meme times.
It's great. Like wholesome memes. You got cat meme, like anything. It all exists. It's all there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite Twitter accounts is there is no cat in this photo. And it's like a challenge. And every day you look at it and you're like, it's there sometimes. Oh my God. The my depression light's just gone off.
Oh no.
It was so intense. It's like, Rosie, oh my God. But yeah, and it's like basically the scenery of like, sir, why are you going off? This is
for listeners
down.
Rosie was lighting herself up.
I looked like a Christmas tree. It just kept showing up. Like I wasn't pressing any buttons, but it turned into a phantom and started lighting up on its own. And it was very bright because it's an SAD lamp. So it was like not unnoticeable. Like it was very obvious because I was suddenly immune. But
I wasn't sure whether you were about to like enter the metaverse or something mid episode.
A spotlight. I'm like, I have an important announcement to make. Oh my God, no, never the metaverse. But yeah, I follow a bunch of like really wholesome accounts on Twitter that I would recommend to people.
I think one of my favorite, like, I'm going to say genres of Twitter memeage, if that's a phrase, is like TV shows out of context.
Yes.
Just like, oh, a thing I like, making things that I like, lovely. Like, I follow an account that's just Frasier screenshots. It's just
yes.
random...
Oh my God, I know what they're talking about. Or is that Frasier looking out the window?
That's Frasier looking at games. So that's a great one as well. But like, Frasier screenshots is literally just a random frame. And sometimes it can just be a completely blank frame of like just Frasier episodes. But I have saved so many for later meme use because they're just great.
Oh. What's one I saw recently? It was every single frame of Shrek in the entire movie with one tweet a day being one frame. And then it finally got to the bit where he opened the door. It's like little shack door. And then it went viral because everyone was so excited to wait for that specific frame to come out. What a world we live in, hey?
What a time to be alive. Am I right? Sorry, we were talking about what you do with unlimited resources.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I would love... So, in a nutshell, expand the podcast that I already do. Explore content creation in the sense of streaming or video making. And... I did have one more, but I've forgotten it now, so it can't be that important. So I'm going to stick with the two.
Okay, awesome.
Be decisive.
Great. Nice. I like to see it. So the next question that I like to sort of have like in the blue sky range of questions that we have here is we can take inspiration from many things, many people, but is there any one or person or body that you would like to give a little shout out to, just as something or someone that inspires you? On a semi-frequent basis, I guess, or just has inspired you?
Mine's going to be really like...
There is no... Don't end that sentence, because this is just like, this is what inspires you. This is about you. Like, so any answer is completely acceptable.
Okay. My dad.
Great answer. There we go.
My dad, he's like my biggest cheerleader. It's really sweet. He gets so enthusiastic about everything I do. which makes me enthusiastic about what I do. And whenever I get something exciting, he's always like one of the first people I get buzzing to like ring and tell him what's going on. Like he's just my biggest fan. It's really sweet because he just wants to know what's going on all the time. And through what I've done with podcasting and Safe in Our World and everything else, I've been able to get him to be more honest about mental health and to talk more openly about things in the world that we didn't talk about before. And he's so willing to learn that sort of, he comes to me with questions about stuff that he wouldn't usually have done. And being able to see him not be educated, I don't think that's quite the right word, but move more into my world, I suppose, in talking a lot about social issues and mental health and things like that. That's been really nice too. So yeah, I'm going to go with my dad.
That is a great answer. I hope he enjoys listening to this bit of the podcast.
I'm going to force him to listen to it now. Be like, look, I was really nice about you.
No, I think that's a great answer. At the end of the day, like what it is that enriches, enhances, and empowers you to do what you do, like is the whole point of the question. I think that's a great answer, and I'm really pleased that like you just had a smile on your face that entire time you were answering that question. I think that's like that embodies what the question was about, you know.
I'm just very lucky to have such a great family. Like my mum obviously is incredibly supportive as well, but I feel bad now that I haven't said her. But I don't know. My dad's just so enthusiastic about everything. It's nice.
Nice.
It's a nice change.
That's good. So if we can, if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of circle back around a little bit. We just because it's an area of my interest, it's something you spoke about, but like that kind of overlap just between gaming and mental health on like that sort of like personal level. We kind of talked about it a little bit, because I think while you are what I would call in academia, my area of research, digital games with a purpose, games that are rooted and centered around mental health themes. You know, and the research I'm doing is looking at like what happens to people when they play them, you know, as opposed to games that aren't set around that, and that's the research, right? But the reason you make that distinction is because that is different to just say general mental health generally is improved by playing games. There was the study published, I think it was at the beginning of 2021, Oxford Institute for Internet Research, famous. It was made headlines. Animal Crossing players. And Plants vs Zombie players.
Plants vs Zombies
had higher levels of well-being. Now, quite good science. They don't make claims as to why that was. The famous, say it with me, correlation doesn't equal causation. Catchphrase on the show. But like that in of itself was a huge thing. So I just sort of wanted to tap into a little bit more about like just your experiences as someone who plays games. And maybe sort of like that sort of overlap just from a general standpoint, if that's all right.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's, I kind of already talked a little bit about never making the connection between mental health and games before I moved into this job, which is true. But on reflection, I know that that's obviously wasn't the case. And I think for me, it allows something to occupy my brain enough for me to not think about it consciously, but also to work on what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking about, or at least put my brain in the position to be able to process something that I don't want to do or I don't want to think about. And so that's always been a huge thing for me, is being able to put myself into a mindset where I'm able to deal with my problems. I guess in a blunt way, I suppose. I'm also fascinated by the research specifically. Like, it's obviously well known within your field. I'm guessing, I'm not guessing, I know that it's well known within your field about like the links between PTSD and games like Tetris and things like that. Like, it's fascinating how games can actually do things like that, and the fact that they change the mechanics of your brain or like target specific areas of your brain to think certain ways, which is so fascinating to me. And I wish I knew more about the psychology behind it, because I love the psychology. Like, I did it at college for a little while and I thought it was fascinating, but I've never had time to go into it more. and look into specific papers. And so for now, what I've been doing is when I come across them, I've got like a whole list of papers that I want to read that I've seen on various social medias and things like that. But when it comes to my personal relationship with it, I guess it's a mixture of putting my brain into a position where it can process things, using it as a social crutch in some ways, to be able to socialize with people who I don't usually get to talk to. I love using games not only to play them, but also just to have a discussion point around. I think it's always really nice. And I've made so many friends by talking about video games in general, which then has in turn affected my mental health. So it's more like a third party sort of interaction, I suppose.
And I think that's a really valid point in that, like, a lot of people maybe like will say, like, and you mentioned it before, like, Life is Strange True Colors is a single player game. It doesn't necessarily have a multiplayer element as far as I'm aware, but you're going to meet a friend to discuss the game. Like, the game is facilitating that discussion. Like, it adds to that, like, context, you know, like, that's really important. And that's the thing that comes out of game playing. Like,
yeah, totally. Like, I've made friends. I've made a bunch of friends in Scotland that I want to go and visit last year because of games. And that's wild to me because obviously when you're growing up, I'm sure you probably had the same sort of thing where it's like the internet's dangerous. You can't talk to anyone on the internet. Stressful, scary. People are going to murder you. All that sort of stuff. And I was terrified for ages. And then I was like, actually, there's a lot of good on the internet. You just have to be careful around it. And games was one of them for me.
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Out of interest as well, I'm again just curiosity. Tell me to shut my big, bazoo. But like, like what sort of stuff do you sort of enjoy playing? You mentioned sort of Life is Strange. You mentioned BioShock. Is there any sort of other stuff? Because when I think of like myself, and I'm going to preface the question with this after I've asked the question. But like when I think of like me and like maybe like mental health, like the games that I maybe play that I would almost say benefit my mental health most. Like I love sports games. The most hours I've probably racked up are in games like Pro Evo or Rocket League. I just enjoy the sport. I enjoy playing with it. I will play it for hours. That's the kind of game where I'm like, one more game. And then like it's 2 a.m. That's one of mine for me. And that's the kind of game because I focus so much on the sport that everything else escapes my brain. And that's the pleasurable bit for it. By the same token, I love like 100-hour JRPGs that are incredible world-saving adventures. They're swashbuckling and, absolutely rootin' tootin', So, like, it's interesting that you can have that really wild kind of despair in the same way that I also love playing stuff like Gris, So I was just kind of intrigued
to hear more. It's good to have a variety of games, though, isn't it? Like, I talk about this quite a lot on podcasts, and what's one more, right? I really like the idea of Johnny Chiodini did a TED Talk on games and mental health, which is really good, and you should check it out. And they talked about the concept of a sad game, which is a game that you gravitate towards when you're in a certain mood, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the same game every time, but you kind of become hyperfixated on one specific game as to how it makes you feel. And I've had that with a lot of different things, and they're always really different. So I've had Binding of Isaac, I've had Kingdom from Raw Fury, which is a delightful game. I've had it with Bloons Tower Defense.
Nice.
I love that game so much. I've had it with Tetris and Sudoku and like all of these random games, and then with like Uncharted or The Last of Us, like some heavy narrative driven games as well. So it totally depends. But I do become like hyper fixated on one world at a time most of the time. And it's usually what will help me if I'm in a bad position or if in a bad mental health state. So I always find that concept really interesting.
Okay, that makes sense. I think again, like it sounds so reductive, but just like play what you enjoy,
Yeah, exactly. That's the crux of it, right? No one's ever going to have like just one genre of game that they enjoy because they're embedded within so much of what we do, and like even like mobile games and casual games like that, like it's so easy to pick up, especially if you're traveling or whatever, and people don't consider them to be games because they don't think of them as a console, I guess. And it's just like that mind distinction between the two. But
I mean, like, what is a video game is legitimately a debate in like the academic world of games. Like, it's like, well, where do you draw the line? And you'll get people who sit on a certain side of the fence that are like, well, clearly it's Fortnite because it's popular. And you'll get people that will be like, well, no, it's clearly, have you heard of Final Fantasy? They're proper games. Whereas, like, I take the much more sort of colloquial kind of view of like, well, if it's something that you play,
if it's interactive, I would call it a game.
Like, you get stuff that really like blurs the lines. Like Celia Holden has done the Psychology of Games, a really good book, really nice introductory kind of thing. That's very, very easy to pick up and read. It's not rooted in jargon too much. And she sort of poses this question, and it's kind of like, there are things that blur the lines, like Black Mirror's Bandersnatch. Like, is that a game or is it a film? Because it's interactive. It's choose your own adventure. And you can kind of say that a game needs to have XYZ components. That's fair. And maybe like, again, as you maybe break that down, this type of game needs to have this, and this. But I mean, when you see so much overlap with genre, like the availability of games, I mean, you can play, like, is Pokemon Go not a Pokemon game because it's on mobile?
No, of course there's a Pokemon game. It's got Pokemon in the name. Come on.
But you're not battling them to level up and getting the gym
I really
badges.
wish people would stop like gatekeeping what a game is, what it isn't a game. Just let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. It's not hurting anyone. It's just like a strange thing to me to want to be so specific on what's a game and what's not, or what's in the certain group of games and what's not. Like, it really doesn't matter. I don't think, in my opinion. But
it sounds daft, and maybe this is just a product of our conversation, but it's like, why do people have such a hard time with just enjoying things that they tell you that they enjoy? I enjoy it so much because I get to gatekeep it and tell other people they're not allowed.
It's a strange sort of complex not to have, I suppose, and being like, I enjoy not allowing other people to enjoy things. It's just a bit odd.
Just enjoy it. Let you enjoy it in your way. Like, this whole thing came out recently of like difficulty settings. Like,
my gosh, yeah. As if that's
no
even
babies.
A question.
Like, if you're playing on easy, you're not playing the full game. Like,
I hate that so much, because it's like, it's literally just making the game more inclusive for people and more accessible for people to play. And it's not indicative of being like, I just I have feelings, and I feel like we're very much on the same page, but it's just like, play the game how you want to play it. It doesn't matter. The game is the same. Just I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
It's really, it again baffles me very much. It leaves me very much befuddled, I guess. So I thank you for indulging me on that tangent. I appreciate it very much.
No worries.
As we sort of gear up to our wind down, I deliberately used up and down there because that's a nice little image for everyone.
Nice.
Like a nice little roller coaster, you see.
I saw it in my brain. Thank you.
I always like to ask a few quick fire questions.
Okay.
But you don't really have to answer them quickly, so I don't know why I call them those. But the idea for this, the story for this question is, you are going on a retreat. You've decided that you need a little bit of rest and relaxation. You're going there voluntary, but it's a desert island disc kind of setup, in that you're going to wherever you like.
Nice.
All your items will magically work for no apparent clear reason. So don't worry about that. And you are allowed to take one book or collection of books with you, an album, a game, and a film or TV sort of box set. Again, like, if it comes in a set, you're allowed to have that. What do you take with you?
Okay, I've got this down. So, book, I've brought props again. So
excellent,
because I got so excited. So the book I would take is called The Last. It's by Hammer Jameson. It is a brilliant book, and I won't be able to do it justice by me trying to remember exactly, without spoiling it, like how to describe it. So I'm just going to like read the blurb like very briefly.
Let's do it.
So the world has ended in nuclear war. You and 19 other survivors hole up in an isolated Swiss hotel. You wait, you survive, then you find the body. One of your number has blood on their hands, and the race is on to find the killer. However, the book is so different to what you expect it to be, and that's why I love it so much, because it took so many turns I wasn't expecting it to, and would highly recommend it. It's got a very atmospheric feel to it that I don't know, it's just unlike any other book that I've read before, so I would highly recommend this book.
I mean,
it's called The Last.
I want to buy it right now because I love myself a little bit of sci-fi dystopia, and I love me a little bit of murder mystery as well, and it sounds like that's got elements of both.
It does. It also has a huge emphasis on character relationships, which is fascinating. So would highly recommend.
You mean good writing? What?
Oh yeah, but like it's focused on it. Like it's not just building up a character. It's like a lot of it. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but just read it.
I'm gonna do the thing now where I could Google it, but I won't. Have you read Stations 11?
Oh my God, yeah. So I actually got that as a recommendation after I read that book from a friend, and I've got it and I haven't read it yet, and I really want to. So that's my next one.
I read it because a friend was like, "Oh, Chris, like you'll like this. You like your sci-fi dystopia." Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Because when you were describing that, I was like, "Oh, you'll like this." It's
that's right exactly what someone else said.
Right up that ballpark. Exciting.
So I'm buzzing to read that as well. One album, I think I'm gonna. Ooh.
You can whip out the vinyl again if you want and just be like...
No, I'm going to change my mind. I would actually listen to the Last of Us original soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
I love that soundtrack so much. I also listened to it a lot while I not played the game. Obviously, I listened to it while I played the game. While I read that book, because the music fit very well with the theme and the atmosphere of the story, which is why I thought it was interesting and how music can mean lots of different things. It's also enough background music for me to just do what I want and not have to, if I have to listen to it for a long time, if I'm on a desert island, I don't want lyrics all the time. It's something somber enough to like make me feel things, but familiar enough that it's nice to listen to.
Okay.
And I feel like the OST captures that. So yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Awesome.
One film or set of films would be the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Okay, I was going to say I completely allow like TV box set as well. That's fine, but Lord of the Rings trilogy.
No, it'll have to be the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Are you not going for the 6 and including the Hobbit?
No, screw the Hobbit. Doesn't belong.
There will be people that have opinions about that.
I think that the Hobbit did not do justice and was too Americanized.
Oh, Rosie, you're such a book snob.
Oh, I've not even read the books. That's how bad it is. I just don't think that they reflect the universe in the same way that the original films did. And they will never hold the same place in my heart. And I have to see them as separate because also the book, I've read The Hobbit. It's like 100, 200 pages. It's tiny. And they've made that into 3 films mainly for profit, in my opinion, which is why I'm a bit frustrated with it because I think they went downhill as they came out. Got feelings on The Hobbit, but I would only take the original trilogy.
Okay. Which edition?
The extended edition, of course.
The super califragilistic edition?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Give me all of that content. I want all of it.
Just check it. Okay. I have to go down this tangent though. Have you played the original Lord of the Rings games?
Oh my God, I watched my brother play them and they were so good.
Because like there are people that are like Lord of the Rings 2 Towers on PS2 is the best game of all time.
It's brilliant. It's so good. I really want to get them again. Like when I have a gaming PC one day, I will get all of the old school games again because they were great. They were really good.
I have still got my like Return of the King GameCube disc. Mm-hmm. Like and like you could even, because Nintendo, you could connect it to the Game Boy Advance version of the game via the GNC for unlockables.
Nice.
That's like wild, right? Like
amazing.
They have to be some of, if not the best, and I would argue a different point on that, but some of the best like movie tie-in games ever.
Yeah, because mostly they're disappointments. I feel, apart from the Hobbit game.
Okay.
The old school Hobbit game, PS2. Okay. That was amazing. 10 out of 10.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Did I pass?
A little bit of love for the Hobbit. No, that's fine. That's fine.
A little bit of love for the Hobbit, but only when it's done well.
Oh, shots fired. Oof.
Yeah. Okay. Burn.
And then I suppose this is the one that maybe you've already answered, but what video game would you take?
Yeah, I think I'd take The Hobbit.
Oh, whoa,
It's such
okay.
I think it's because it's just got such a nostalgic place in my heart that I would really enjoy it. And because I've kind of like I've got a theme going for this desert island, right? Because I've got Lord of the Rings and I've got The Hobbit, and then I've got The Last, and then The Last of Us soundtrack.
Oh,
Oh my gosh,
hold,
this is such a
hold
good
on.
collection.
What? Oh, I see you've done some things here. Your Bioshock
The
trilogy, just like
Last.
silently weeping in the PS4
I do
now.
love Bioshock. Honestly, I think it probably realistically would be Bioshock, but just for sake of being thematic in this, I'm going to say The Hobbit.
I mean, are you saying that Rapture doesn't meet all the other thematic criterion?
It
It's a
does,
trilogy, so there'd be another
but it's not the
three.
theme of my full desert island right
Okay,
now. I
fair.
mean, it would be desert. I suppose it's underwater, right? So maybe it would. Okay, yeah, I'll go Bioshock.
Okay, all right.
Convince me.
I
You've shamed me into picking it now.
I did no such thing. I was just merely asking the question, which is my job in this context.
Leading question.
Purely, I always like to sort of ask because it's like I've had people approach the question of what could I just play for hours and hours and hours and like never get bored of it. I've had people that sort of approach it from like that. Oh, I could replay this 100 times because it's nostalgically brilliant. And that's why I posed the question.
Yeah. It's hard because I do hyperfixate on games, so it would change. But I think the most consistent one has been Bioshock.
I mean, there are, I don't like to use the phrase, but there are no wrong answers. Like, it's okay. You can just, your preferences
There
are
are
your
in my
preferences.
heart. I'm going to finish this podcast and then I'm going to think, oh my God, I never thought about this game that I hold so dearly to my heart. And it's just going to crush me and I'm going to think about it for the next like 3 months.
I
Just
mean,
watch me.
there's always just too many games, right? Too many.
I'll just tweet you if I change my mind just to do it justice.
Hit me up. If you see
no context allowed.
a random change in like the show notes, like better yet, just send me like a screenshot and a title, and just
okay.
we'll see if I get it.
Perfect. You'd be like, what?
Oh, I remember now.
I remember now.
Okay, so I'm very conscious of your time. I've very, very, very much enjoyed this conversation so far, but I always like to turn the tables and offer you, the guest, the chance to ask me a question, if you would so like. I will warn, I've had the what would you take to the desert island disc one a couple of times. But is there anything you'd like to ask me?
Well, I won't do the desert island one just to avoid repetition in podcasts because that's no fun. Is there anyone that you would hate to have on your podcast?
I'm gonna default to saying no because I'm washing my hair. I wouldn't
oh no, what would be the worst thing that a podcast guest could do?
Just like, I don't start spouting like really bigoted, horrible things. Like that's the kind of thing that would not make the cut. That would just not wash with me. I wouldn't want to sensationalize or trivialize like what they were saying and like make it an argument. You know what I mean? Like you touched on it yourself. Like I'll have a debate. I'm happy to discuss things, but like I'm not here to like get into a fight for like, oh, spicy podcast debate
content. Yeah, it's not fun.
Spills over hashtag hot chips. Like
you won't believe what they said next.
Like that type of like
yeah.
I ain't ragging on anyone who's like racket is that type of thing, but I'm just like, it's a certain genre that I don't necessarily subscribe to, both in terms of that as a theoretical phrase, but also literally.
Yeah. No, I think that'll be the one. I might ask you off podcast what you would take on desert island because I am curious because I always like knowing stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'll leave it at that.
Oh, that's fair. I've had some really like broad ranging questions. I think the only other thing that like, not that I wouldn't have, but I think that like I am like aware of like what would I do in that situation, I think, is if someone got like very quite emotional like during an episode, because obviously mental health and all that type of thing, like I don't know, like that would be like, oh, how would I manage that in the context of the episode? more than like
yeah, that would be
uproar.
difficult, especially if you don't know them as well, because you don't really know how to support them. So I guess that's tricky. But I suppose you could always preface, like, kind of what you did with me. You know whether questions are going to be super hard hitting or not. So I guess you can plan in advance if you know that you might get emotional talking about certain things, to just be like, hey, I'm not comfortable talking about this or that or the other. And that's kind of one thing that I do with my other podcasts, is that I ask them if there's anything they don't want to talk about, and I will avoid it with as much as power as I can do. So yeah,
That's why I kind of like send the questions out, but like,
yeah,
I should probably start doing that, because I then just get into the conversation, start asking really wild stuff. Like, so the future of safe in our world, then like hit me with the 5-year plan. And
I don't mind though. I get that stuff quite a lot, so I'm always happy to talk about it. And like, I'm pretty much an open book, so there isn't much that I won't talk about. So I never have to tell anyone that I won't talk about certain things. But yeah, I always like to give people the option, just in case there's like a specific traumatic experience that they're like, yeah, I'd rather steer clear of that, please.
Fair. You see, look, I'm learning from what I would deem a much more senior professional.
Stop it.
Love to see it. Very lastly, then, this is the last thing before we truly wrap up. But where is the best place for people to find you? The links will be attached wherever you've found this.
So my platform of choice is Twitter, which is at RTParty3. And I tweet a lot of garbage on there, but sometimes there's like a gem. So, you never know. Sometimes it might be good. So, maybe go look if you're interested. You can find anything to do with Safe in Our World at safeinourworld.org or at Safe in Our World on most social platforms. And the Content Cafe podcast you can find on Twitter at Content Cafe Pod or anchor.fm/Content Cafe Pod. And I think that's all I've got to plug.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Rosie, thank you very much for joining me on the show. I have been psyched
for having me.
to be with you. I said the
nice.
thing. For now, for our visual viewers, audience members, I'll move up to the end of the screen whenever I can find it, and then we will sign off. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, take it easy. Bye-bye.